Hello and welcome to another live stream. So, this is the third weekly members only live stream. And in this one, I thought I should talk about the economic situation because that is a topic that I've largely left untouched. Which one? There we go. Okay, yeah. So that is a topic that I've largely left untouched. So I thought I should probably cover it in this live stream. So there's a bunch of things that I want to cover. The first one is the GDP and the PPP of different countries. Then I'll be looking at the national debt to GDP ratio, how much of the budget is actually spent on paying off the debts, and generally the financial situation in different countries. So which countries will I look at? I'll look at the United States, Russia, and China, because those are the three main players. And I'll be looking at Germany as well, because that is the major player in Europe. So exactly what will I be looking at? GDP of the United States, Russia, China, and finally we have Germany. Then I'll be making a PowerPoint presentation live. Okay, so we have Germany's GDP right here. Economic situation analysis. All right, so GDP, we have Germany. Make that much smaller so that it can fit three more. Then we have China. Then we have United States and Russia. So why did I decide to make this analysis? That is because I checked out the different GDPs, PPPs, and debt and so on. And I realized that the economic situation in the West is much worse than I originally thought. That is because the debt is astronomically high and the budget deficits are also very high. While at the same time, we see countries like Russia and China who have much lower debts and GDP and so on issues, which could contribute to the fact that there was a Wall Street something like this. Or you can sort them by size. So this one, bottom, top, there you go. So we see here, biggest GDP in United States, then comes China, then Germany, and then Russia. Now, if we look at the PPP, which is the purchasing power parity, what is the difference between GDP and PPP? The difference is that different countries have different prices for the same products, which means that in China, you can buy more for $1 than you can in the United States. So the GDP purchasing power parity is higher because the money's worth is higher, which means that a country like China is actually richer than the United States. So what is the purchasing power parity of China? It is currently 27 trillion in 2021. So we have the PPP. We have China, United States, Russia, and Germany. China has, that's the GDP, here we go. China has 27 trillion. Then we have United States with 23 trillion. So China actually has more worth of money than the United States. The share of money that the United States has is worth less than what China has. Then we look at Russia's, which is 5 trillion. Oh, that's 2023. We have to... This is 2021, right? Yeah, 2021. We have to compare to 2021 worth. So that's 4.5 billion in Russia. And then we have the final one, which is Germany, which is 4.26 trillion. So Russia actually has more money than Germany does. Something along these lines. Here we go. So, richest countries by GDP, that is the United States, then China, then Germany, then Russia. And if we look by PPP, then it is China, United States, Russia, Germany. Then we have to look at the national debt to GDP. So if we look at that, we can see Germany debt to GDP. That is 60%. Let's look at 2021. It has 69%, essentially 70%. So Germany has 70%. Then we actually have the United States come in first with the highest debt to GDP ratio. United States, then Germany, then China probably has more than Russia. So Germany is that, United States, debt to GDP, USA, 2021. Look at that, 126%, it is insane. That is the United States. Then we have China, which is China GDP to debt ratio, 21.4%. And then finally we have Russia, debt to GDP ratio, which is 13.4%. So what does this mean for the different countries? It means that the more debt you have, the more you have to pay for that debt of your annual budget, as well as like you don't have that money. That is money you actually owe. So you're paying what's it called? You're paying interest rates for the money you owe, and you don't own that money. It's just temporary money. So essentially, they're losing a lot of money to this debt. So we currently see the United States with, well, let's start from the start. United States GDP is 23.32 trillion. And that is in 2021. Let's just put it in the title. Economic Analysis 2021. The reason I know 2021 is because not all data is available for 2022. So China is 17.73 trillion. Germany with 4.26 trillion. And then finally Russia with 1.779 trillion. So by this, purely from GDP, we assume the United States is super rich and Russia is super poor. When we look at PPP, we see China's PPP to be 27.31 trillion, which is larger than the United States GDP, as well as PPP, which is 23 trillion. And we have Russia with 4.5 trillion. And then finally we have Germany with 4.26 trillion. So Russia is in third place and the United States is in second place, with China topping this list. And then we'll look at the debt as well. We see that for United States is 126%. Germany, it is 69.8. Then we have Malaysia's rounded up to 70%. Then we have China with 21.4%, and let's round down to 21%. And Russia with 13%. So we see here there's a drastic difference in how much debt they have. So with this, we see that different countries have different budgets. What is the national or the federal budget, US 2022, 2021? 4 trillion, 6.8 trillion. That's a 2.8 trillion deficit. That is an insane deficit. So we see from this that the United States is losing huge amount of money. That was under Donald Trump, 2.8 trillion deficit. So federal budgets. So we have the United States, China, Germany, Russia. The United States had a budget of 6.8 trillion. 6.8 trillion with a 2.8 trillion deficit. Then we have China, which was $4 trillion with a 500 billion deficit. So that is $4 trillion budget with a 500 or 0.5 trillion deficit. And you have to think about it this way. The $4 trillion here in China is worth $8 trillion. And in 1.5 trillion deficit is worth $1 trillion deficit. So China's budget is larger than the United States budget, and the deficit is smaller. Then we have Germany, federal budget, which ran a 500 billion budget. 2022, not 2023. Yeah, 2022. $517 billion. So a 0.5 trillion budget. What's the deficit? Deficit was 100 billion. 0.1 billion deficit. So this is a same rate as China's deficit, budget to deficit. So they have a 20%, 15 to 20% deficit compared to the United States with a 50% deficit. Then we look at Russia's budget for 2022, where they had a budget of 343 billion. No, 341. Okay, so there's a deficit of 15 billion. That's revenues, that's the expenses. So 341 minus 343. How is that a surplus of 15? I'm not sure, but exactly 2022 expenses 343, revenues 341. So essentially they're using as much as they have. 0.34 trillion, 0.34 trillion deficit. And this is all while the 0.34 trillion is actually worth $1 trillion, because the PVP is 3 times as much as Russia's GDP. So Russia has a larger, this is a 0.01 trillion deficit. So Russia has a larger budget and a much smaller deficit than any other country, but much larger budget than the German budget, double the size of the German budget. So Russia's government is actually double as rich as Germany's government, and they're not running a deficit. Their deficit is insignificant. Forgot to take a screenshot. So Russia's government is actually economically responsible. There we go. So from this we can conclude Russia's state has more money than the German state, and the Chinese state has more money than the United States. We also see a much smaller debt by Russia and China, and a much larger PVP. So the Chinese people is richer than the American people in total, not per capita. In per capita, the United States is much richer than China. But as a country, because that is what we're comparing, we're not comparing the standard of living, we're comparing the ability and the capabilities of a country. So the country of China is richer than the country of the United States, and the country of China is a smaller deficit than the country of the United States. The country of China has less debt than the country of the United States. The country of Russia is richer than the country of Germany. The country of Russia has a smaller deficit than the country of Germany. The country of Russia has a much smaller debt than the country of Germany. So the East is actually much richer than the West when it comes to a country's power, money, and budget. So this is actually very significant, because this means that Russia is able to sustain this war better than Germany is, for example. Because they're running a much smaller deficit, they have no loans, and they have a good budget. On the contrary, Germany has a smaller budget and has a larger deficit, and it has more loans. And at the same time, if China is pulled into this war, then Russia or China would be able to sustain a conflict more than the United States can, because China has a larger budget, smaller deficit, less debt. So that is my economic situation analysis of 2021 for these 4 countries, which are the United States, China, Russia, and Germany. And as we can see, United States and Germany just has inflated numbers that doesn't actually respond to the reality of the situation. And that the current situation is that the West in general just have inflated numbers, and the East actually have deflated numbers. as to their true capabilities. And all of these are just to support the Western propaganda, in the sense that Russia is going to have an economic collapse. They're going to fail. They're not going to be able to sustain this war. But in reality, the West is hurting more than the East. If you look at a recent Wall Street Journal post, likelihood of a recession, probability of here, I think this one. I believe they made a article where they claimed Western countries had a much higher risk of recession than Russia. I saw it on Twitter, but I don't remember where it was. Probability of recession. There we go. So, recession probabilities worldwide, 2023. The UK was at 75%. New Zealand, 70%. United States, 65%. Germany, 60%. Italy, 60%. Canada, 60%. France, 50%. South Africa, 45%. Australia, 40%. Russia, 37.5%. So we see the UK actually has double the probability of a recession than Russia, and the UK is supposed to put sanctions on Russia. So we're seeing how this is backfiring. And then we have China all the way down at 12.5%. So we're seeing the severe disparity between the reality of the situation and what the media is telling you. So that is my analysis. This is a short one, as I have a cough, so I won't be able to do much more. And there's no concurrent viewers, so I have no one to invite to talk with me. But I hope for next week or generally in the future that there will be more viewers. And as such, we can interact with each other, whether through comments or if you want to talk with me directly, there will be a link set up for you to come and join. But that is going to be all for this stream. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.